On behalf of the LA Clippers and the NBA Commissioner Office, I would like to make the following statement. Statement being, uh-oh! Just when you think this entire absurd cap circumvention saga cannot get any worse for the Clippers and for the NBA, Pablo Torre drops another nuke. Come to find out, the actual Clipper investment in this failed tree company was not 50 mil. It was actually, reportedly, 118 mil over 18 months from Ballmer and the Clippers. Allegedly. So essentially, the tree people did not just con or dupe Ballmer once. They conned him and duped him over and over and over again. At least that's what the Clippers and Ballmer want you to believe. It turns out, according to Torre's reporting, the Clippers were purchasing carbon credits from Aspiration on top of Ballmer's $50 million investment. And it turns out that one of those carbon credit purchases, reportedly, was worth $32 million. And it occurred immediately before Kawhi Leonard signed a $28 million no-show contract with the company. And another carbon credit purchase allegedly bailed out that company so they could make a payment to Kawhi just weeks later. So the timing is all really interesting, isn't it? And before you come at Pablo, he has the receipts also. If you thought Bob Saleh was keeping receipts, you ought to see Pablo's shoebox. He's got the signature of the Clippers' chief financial officer on these carbon credit purchases, and he's even got Uncle Dennis texts pressuring the tree people to pay up. And the irony of it is, Pablo only went down that carbon credit rabbit hole because of Mark Cuban. Something Mark Cuban said while aggressively trying to defend his buddy Steve Ballmer actually sent Pablo down the path to this revelation. Of course, that's not stopping Cuban from posting through it. He's still on X posting novels that nobody's reading, still defending Ballmer's innocence. But at this point, he's pretty much the last one claiming that Ballmer is innocent, aside from Ballmer and the Clippers. Let me put it to you this way. Cuban is not convincing anybody of anything. Neither are the Clippers, and neither is Adam Silver. If anything, they're all just making it worse. Just like when Ballmer made it worse when he ran to ESPN and put on his Mickey Mouse falsetto voice to claim, they conned me. They conned me. I'm the one who got conned. They conned me. They conned me.
You're one of the richest men in America.
Which, by the way, is still what the Clippers are standing by. That's still their story. Actually, technically, they did use the word duped instead of conned in their statement today, which read in part, and I quote, "The effort reflects Steve wanting to set a positive example and raise awareness of the growing and important role of voluntary carbon markets. Unfortunately, he was duped on the investment and some parts of this agreement, as were many other investors and employees." End of quote. Oh, that's what he's about. Oh, that clears that up. That totally explains why Ballmer and the Clippers kept pouring money into this failing tree company without doing any due diligence. It's because Steve was so desperate, he and his family, to, quote, set a positive example and raise awareness of the growing and important role of voluntary carbon markets. Oh, okay. Does anybody anywhere buy that? That doesn't even make any sense. But you know what does make sense to me? Pouring all this money into this failing company just to make sure they honor their end of a no-show contract agreement with Kawhi, and to find a way to funnel this dude stacks and stacks and stacks without it somehow impacting the salary cap at all. Now that to me would make a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Trying to pay Kawhi more than the cap allows and doing it through this company is really the only scenario that makes any of this make any sense. And by the way, it's been widely reported that Kawhi asked for specifically this type of arrangement as a free agent back in 2019. And I don't mean reported just now. I mean, my dude Sam Amick had this in The Athletic 6 years ago. Quote, sources say the league was told that Robertson asked team officials for part ownership of the team, a private plane that would be available at all times, a house, and last but certainly not least, a guaranteed amount of off-court endorsement money that they could expect if Leonard played for their team. End of quote. So the league knew back in 2019 that all these crazy requests were being made, and then the league just stood by and watched the Clippers make a $300 million sponsorship deal with a failing tree company, and then continued to dump money into that failing tree company until they finally filed for bankruptcy. But we're supposed to believe that it had nothing to do with Kawhi's request for a no-show. You know, not a way for them to funnel money to this guy without the league or anybody else knowing that they were competing with. Is there anybody anywhere who either isn't involved or hasn't done something similar who is buying any of this bullcrap at all? Which brings me to my man, Powder. Ball is in your court now, Powder. I mean, you can't really be satisfied with the quote, they called me. You can't be satisfied with that, right, Powder?
You're one of the richest men in America.
And by the way, you can't let the other 29 owners see this and then be empowered and emboldened to pull off similar schemes. Right, Powder? If you don't come down on this guy, what is to stop any of the others from doing the exact same thing? I mean, the others that aren't already doing it that Pablo Torre hasn't gotten around to yet. Maybe that's it. Maybe Powder knows that Ballmer is not the only one pulling crap like this. Or maybe Powder knew more about this situation in real time than he's actually letting on. You know what's not convincing though, Powder? When you flip-flop and you change your story around on us, that's actually pretty suspicious. That's actually what people who are guilty and or hiding something tend to do. They flip-flop, which is why it's curious that Powder, aka Adam Silver, initially tried to tell us he had never even heard of Aspiration, only to turn around only a few days later and walk it right back. Here was the initial claim.
When the podcast came out, it was news to me. I'd frankly never heard of the company Aspiration before, and I'd never heard a whiff of anything around an endorsement deal with Kawhi or anything around engagement with the Los Angeles Clippers. So it was all new to me. I heard it. I saw some of the follow-up information.
Damn, Powder. Really? Frankly, you never heard of the company. Not even a whiff, not even a whisper, nothing. You never heard of a company that made a $300 million sponsorship deal with the Clippers, even though that deal would have had to have been audited by the league office. But you've never heard of them. Yeah, make that make sense, Powder. How do you explain that, ears? Holy crap, Powder, what's next? You don't burn easily? How dumb do we look, Powder? No, how dumb do you sound? Check this dude trying to convince us that what we didn't hear, or we didn't hear what we know we heard, or even worse, that he didn't say what we know he said. Listen to this now.
Just to be clear, I'm not sure if I said I never, if I said I never heard of it, I meant in the context of the accusations here. I mean, I certainly was aware of the brand, but I didn't know anything about it.
Got it, yes.
That's like some Tobin stuff right there. In the context, but, no, you definitely said, never mind context. You definitely said you never heard of it. There's no if. You said it in a press conference, dude. You said, quote, I'd frankly never heard of the company, Aspiration, before. And I'd never heard a whiff of anything around an endorsement deal with Kawhi or anything around engagement with the Los Angeles Clippers. So it was all news to me. End of quote. Well, there's no context or if You said
In contrast, but not in,
Thank
in
you.
quality, but not
You
in
sound like
quantity,
this guy.
I should say. In contrast, but not in
This
quality,
guy
but
actually
not in
sounds
quantity,
better
I should say.
and more believable than you, Powder.
In contrast,
That is
but not
what you
in
said.
quality, but not in quantity.
And it was
I should
clearly a
say.
lie. The only question now is who sounds less believable, Ballmer or Powder? This is Powder's new thing, apparently. Just flip-flop and lie about things that he just said. Like, remember when he said the NBA was a, quote, highlights-based sport? And that really aggravated people. Because essentially it's on par with Rob Manfred calling the commissioner's trophy a, quote, piece of metal. Powder's like, why are you worried about streaming costs? You don't even need to watch the full game. It's a highlights-based sport anyway, and the highlights are free. Remember this, Powder?
There's a huge amount of our content that people can essentially consume for free. I mean, this is very much a highlights-based sport, so, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you name it, any service, the New York Times for that matter, to the extent that your content is not behind a paid firewall. There's an enormous amount of content out there. YouTube, by another example, that is advertising-based that consumers can consume.
Yeah, I don't like that take. That's not a very good take. In fact, not the best look for the commissioner. Thank you, Albie. Not a real good look for the commissioner to come right out and say, you know what? You really don't even have to watch our games. In fact, I would encourage you not to watch our games because it's a highlight-based sport anyway. But you know what's even worse than essentially implying that nobody needs to watch the full games? Coming out a week later and then trying to tell us that's not what you said.
This is very much a highlights-based sport. Want to clarify that?
Yeah, I honestly, probably don't have the question with you. I mean, the question, a portion of the question, the end of the question was about the impact of social media. That's what I was answering.
Enough.
In contrast,
Why
but
do
not,
you say these
quality,
things
but not in
and then
quantity.
double back and try to insist that you never said these things when we have actual video of you saying these things? No, dude, your answer was in response to rising streaming costs. And your point was, it's fine. It's a highlights-based league anyway, and there are free ways to watch highlights. Powder, do not gaslight us. And my thing is, if you're willing to lie about nonsense like this, it makes it very hard to believe that you're telling the truth when it comes to the massive scandal involving the wealthiest owner in the league. So now what? Now what does Powder do besides try to tell us that none of this actually happened and that he said none of it at all? Like, the Donald Sterling treatment is off the table still. He will not be banishing Mr. Ballmer for life. For life. And the reason for that, banishment for life, is not one of the possible collectively bargained punishments for circumventing the cap. However, voiding Kawhi's contract is still on the table. Now, here's the problem with that, if you ask me. If you void this dude's deal, you're rewarding Ballmer. You're not punishing him. Voiding that contract would be the best possible outcome for Ballmer. Then he would have Kawhi and his uncle out of his life and out of his building. That's not a punishment. It's freaking Christmas. The league should do the opposite and make that contract for life. For life. Make it so he's stuck with Kawhi for life. So the guy can never leave. Now that'd be a punishment. Listen, we all know there's no fine that Ballmer can't easily pay. And they could rip his draft picks if he had any. Clippers being the Clippers, they don't even have control of their first-round pick for the next 4 drafts. The only way Powder can really make Ballmer hurt here is by making him keep Kawhi and put up with Kawhi and his uncle's nonsense on the daily, knowing that they're going to keep making absurd demands, and then Kawhi's going to miss half the games because he's hurt or he's just not feeling it. Voiding the contract is the best thing that could happen to Ballmer. They should make him extend the contract. Except stop cheating and trying to circumvent the cap in order to pay for it, allegedly. Either way, we're not going to find out what any punishment is until after the All-Star game, which, of course, another coincidence, it's at the Toilet Palace, the Intuit Dome. Toilets! You know, Powder and Ballmer would like nothing more at this point than to, quote, Jalen Hurts, quote, when you take you a deuce in the Toilet Palace, you don't sit there and look at it. You flush it and you move on. Man, if only it were that easy. Except this is one of the biggest deuces ever. A deuce that would clog every one of Ballmer's beloved toilets
I take
toilet
responsibility
palace.
for how this game went tonight. I take responsibility for that. I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to learn from it. We're going to be a better team from it.
And what do you do?
I believe that.
What do you do?
I truly believe that. You know,
What do you do?
you take you a deuce. You don't sit there and look at it. You flush it and move on.
Thank you.
We're gonna
Exactly.
flush it and move on.
See, that's what they want to do. Except when Ballmer and Powder, or Ballmer and the Clippers, take you a deuce, that deuce is way too big to just flush and move on as much as they would like to. And remember, the cover-up is always worse than the crime itself. Now, I will acknowledge this because this is what Ballmer and the Clippers and their supporter would have you believe. Powder does not have a smoking gun here. Maybe not. But there is enough smoke around this to choke us all to death, and you know it's going to get worse before it gets any better.